live.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Good morning and welcome on this very special winter's morning here in the African bush to your live safari. Hello. Hello, little one. Are you just too cute? And welcome as well to our newest additions to the hyena clan of Djuma, and that is where we are. We are here on Djuma, Arathusa and Cheetah Plains private game reserves in the Sabi Sand in the Greater Kruger National Park area of South Africa. My name is Jamie, and this morning Brian is on camera with me, and of course the thumb making his usual morning smart appearance. Don't forget that we are also interactive, which means, oh, hold on. I think a little antelope just stumbled across the hyena den and got a surprise. When Mom stood up, there was just a disappearing dust cloud and the pitter-patter of feet running away. I doubt that was another hyena. I think that was probably a very confused daker or something similar that accidentally wandered to the wrong termite mound. Definitely didn't sound like paws skittering away in the leaves. I think that was something else. And straight away, hyena cubs doing what they do instinctively, which is to disappear into the safety of their den site, into the safety of those tunnels there. Let's just give them a moment to relax again. I think I was in the middle of saying that you can send through questions on hashtag SafariLIVE on Twitter, or email through to questions@wildearth.tv. But as with any live safari experience, we just never know what's going to happen next and what might interrupt you mid-sentence. This is Gwen. She has been nicknamed Gwen by our viewers who keep very close track of the different hyenas of the hyena clan of Djuma. And her little cubs are probably just over a month old at this point. There are 2 of them, although we started off with just one popping its head out of the den. And from what little we've seen of their behavior, it seems as though one is definitely bolder and slightly larger than the other. And the interesting thing, I think, and the reason I'm speaking very softly now, is that I have a feeling it might take Gwen's little cubs a bit longer to get used to the presence of vehicles. And that's because the rest of the cubs that we've been watching over the last few months, they've actually grown up with older cubs around them. Then they imitate their behavior, so the older cubs show them that it's okay to be relaxed around vehicles. Whereas I think with these little cubs, she's deliberately separated them from the rest of the clan, I think. And it might take them a bit longer to get used to the idea of having vehicles around, which is why I'm speaking quite softly. But hyenas are by nature curious, very, very intelligent, and chances are they'll learn very rapidly that they don't need to be scared of us. Because Mom clearly isn't. Mom is not at all fazed by our presence here. Here we go. She's thinking about relaxing. The one thing that this den site doesn't have is a particularly comfortable spot for the females to lie upon. In fact, it is relatively uncomfortable. The Mvubu Road den had a nice flat spot where the females could lie. The Galago Shortcut den, which is where we are now, doesn't quite have the same appeal. There we go. Hopefully the little cubs will decide to come back out. So while we wait for them, let's go over to James, who is on foot on this brisk and chilly winter's morning. Let's find out what his plans are.
good morning everybody, and welcome on the bushwalk. I'm sneaking past a Pelto Forum Africanum bush here. My name is James, on camera is David. Hello David.
Hello James.
It's 8 degrees apparently, that's pretty chilly, 47 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you living in the 18th century, and it's very nice to be on foot actually, because we're warming up quite nice. It feels a bit warmer than yesterday. The first thing we found for you today is this thing, and it's called Mwampokoro. Can everyone say that? Mwampokoro. That's the Shangaan name for what is a bagworm. Now I know this just looks like a piece of dead leaf, and there is a piece of dead leaf in it, but there is a little worm inside a whole lot of sticks. Now we're walking with Herbert. Herbert is on security detail, and he's just told me that this thing, well, is called Mwampokoro in Shangaan, and that if a cow eats it, so you can imagine in drought conditions like this, there are cattle all over the local areas here, walking past trees, and instead of grazing, because there's no grass, they've taken to browsing, much like many of the buffalo out here. If they eat one of these, they will die. I asked him if it would kill a person, and he looked at me as though I was mad and said, obviously if it'll kill a cow, it'll kill a person. So I thought that was fairly good logic. Anyway, he's now moved off into the bushes there. And so that's a bagworm, Mwampokoro. Now, yesterday we had a few questions about Herbert and why it is that he's not doing some of this presenting. That is absolutely the goal. At the moment, though, there are two reasons why he's not doing the presenting. First of all, his main function is a security detail, and we can't have him. The reason we have a security detail now is that the presenter's face is looking at you, which is where it should be, as you look at me. And that means that I am not fully aware of what's going on around me all the time, and I have to be, or the security detail has to be. So that's one reason. The second reason is that he's still a little bit shy and getting used to the idea of being on camera. So once we've sorted out the security detail side of things, absolutely it is our intention that Herbert will be taking these walks eventually, and then someone else will be walking security detail. So that is the idea. So that's the plan. Our plan this morning is to head off towards the western side of the reserve. We're hopefully going to find some tracks. Watch out for that stick, David. If you sit on that, Dave, it might be, well, you probably won't sit down again for the next few weeks. Our plans to head off to the west, we're not really sure we're going to find. There were some Karula tracks around there yesterday, so we'll see what we can find there, but it's basically a little voyage of discovery to see what we can see. We are as live as Jamie is, so hashtag SafariLIVE or questions@wildearth.tv, any questions that you'd like to ask. And remember, we do have Herbert here as an amazing resource, and so if you want to ask any questions about the local people or the local uses of plants and that sort of thing, please feel free to ask those. We're going to hand you back to Jamie, but I'm just going to show you quickly the oranging sun, which is no doubt rising on Gallagher shortcut as well, over the hyena den.
Well, we are sitting here patiently waiting for the little hyena cubs to get brave again and to pop their heads out of the den site. Just waiting patiently. It might be that we have a long wait ahead of us, in which case we'll probably move on and search for other things, but I'm hoping that both of them might decide to come back out and maybe have some breakfast. Now at this age, the mom spends a great deal of time around the den site itself. As they get older, that will start to change, because as you know, with tiny little animals, with kittens or puppies and indeed hyena cubs, when they are that age, they need to feed more regularly than they will when they start to get older. So mom sticks around almost constantly, and only really every now and again where she's desperately hungry that she moves away and goes off to find food before returning once again to the den site. An absolutely stunning morning. And a wonderful way to start. I still don't know what it was that disturbed them. Whatever it was, it didn't come back. I'm relatively convinced it was an antelope of some kind. Oh, look at that. Isn't that absolutely stunning? Beautiful, crisp morning out here. Now, when we first saw the two cubs out properly together at this den site, there was a bit of squabbling going on between the two of them, actually some relatively serious squabbling that we saw. And of course hyena cubs fight, hyena siblings fight, they push each other and whine and squeal and often snap at each other. But there was an interesting reveal in the dynamics of these two cubs. Now Shamsun, you wanted to know if there's still a danger that one of Gwen's cubs will kill the other, and there are recorded cases, of course, of siblicide within hyena cub litters. What will often happen is if two females are born, then the one cub will kill the other one in a serious conflict for dominance. I think we're past that stage, first of all. I don't think there's much of a risk that that will happen. That being said, you never know, never say never. I have read articles recently, Shamsun, that suggest that the process of siblicide is actually not as common as it was previously thought within hyena clans, and that in fact the researchers or the authors of this particular article suggested that their opinion was most cubs were actually killed by aunticide, being killed by other females in the clan rather than by their own siblings, and that it was in fact a slight misconception that we have about hyena cubs. There's 2 or 3 articles that I've read that suggest something similar. But the thing about spotted hyenas is that we just don't know everything there is to know about them, short of putting a nest cam into the den site itself to be able to see what goes on and spending all of our time with them. We'll never be able to determine exactly what is happening. There we go. Hello. It's okay. At this age, they barely even look like hyenas at all. Oopsie. Come on, Mum, move up. Thirsty. On breakfast. Look at that. That's just a bird, little one. It's just a bird fluttering. It's okay. This is my favorite age to watch them at, when they're still mastering that coordination level. Attempting to surmount the mountain that is Mom's shoulder blade. Oh, never mind, I'll settle for chewing on her ear instead. Now, Blue Butterfrog, I haven't said anything about their names, so don't worry, you didn't miss anything. It's because we haven't named them yet. We found ourselves at a little bit of a crossroads here. Oh, bye-bye. Come on, bring your sibling up. The reason I say that is because up until recently, we'd sort of been, over the last year or so, we'd been nicknaming the hyena cubs after the month that they were born in. We've encountered a hassle here, which is one that was relatively predictable due to the natural passage of time, but that is, we've now come full circle. We have a hyena cub that is now almost a hyena adult, sub-adult, called June, so we can't call these cubs June 1 and 2. We'll have to start coming up with a slightly better solution. The reason we've named our hyenas, apart from the fact that we become as attached to them as we do to the leopards and the lions, is because otherwise it becomes completely impossible for us to actually keep track of their dynamics and their movements. Imagine if I was telling you that this was number 12, and her 2 cubs, number 13 and number 14, and then they were interrupted by number 8, and number 8 is higher ranking, or whatever number system we would give to them. It's next to impossible. It's much easier to remember names than it is to remember numbers. And you'll find researchers do that as well. Okay, we're going to give it another few minutes, see if these cubs aren't brave enough to both pop their heads out. In the meantime, the sun is popping over the horizon.
Isn't that the most glorious sight, everybody? And of course, one of the difficulties of working out here is the earliness with which you have to get out of bed in the morning. And we were chatting around the fire last night about how difficult it is to get used to that, but once you are used to it, how it's very difficult to actually get out of bed after sunrise anymore, because once you've seen that a few times, it's just the most beautiful thing in the world, and especially if you experience it here in the middle of the Kruger National Park, or the western fringes thereof. Well, there's just no real better place to do it other than perhaps over the sea. That's about the same. Now, Herbert has found something else for us here. It is the exoskeleton of a scorpion. Have a look here, David. There on the end of the log is a scorpion exoskeleton. Now, what that means, of course, is that it is not the scorpion itself. The scorpion is away from there. And the exoskeleton, of course, for those of you who have forgotten your school biology, all inverts do not have a skeleton inside like the vertebrates. So mammals and fishes and amphibians and reptiles and birds, those are the 5 classes of vertebrates. They have got internal skeletons, so bones inside them. And the rest of animals, which include all the arachnids, which is one of these, and the insects and the mollusks and the crustaceans, they've all got an exoskeleton or a hard bit outside. Now what that means, of course, is that the hard bit has very limited room to grow. Your bones can grow inside your body, of course. This thing's exoskeleton cannot grow outside it. It's very difficult for it to expand inside because there's so many different parts. And so what they do is, instead of growing the exoskeleton, they just get another one. So once they're ready to grow, they eat away the front of the exoskeleton, round about where my finger is sitting, and they crawl out of it, leaving the almost intact previous exoskeleton, and then they'll get bigger quite quickly, and then the new exoskeleton will harden around this current scorpion. Now this scorpion, I suspect, is quite a nasty fellow. He's got quite a thick tail, quite thin pincers. I don't know which species it is, but I suspect it's probably an olive bark scorpion. And an olive bark scorpion is going to do some serious, well, it won't kill you, but it'll certainly make you feel rather ill. And that's what this one is. And it's very, very fragile. It's made of something called chitin, and it's pretty much indigestible in much the same way that your hair and your bones are indigestible. Now, Herbie's just hailed me and said that he's found something else. Let's go and have a look what he's got. This is marvellous. It's a great surprise. Continuous surprise. Come on, David. Just look over here. Herb basically walks around and he tosses these logs over and finds all sorts of magnificent things. Here it is. Shafan. Yeah, Shafan. Here is the olive scorpion, everybody, the olive bark scorpion. Can you see under here, Dave? Here it is living. Look at that. Can you see him? And he'll be so cold at the moment, he'll be unable to move. We'll find it very difficult to move. Isn't that incredible? This one. There we go. That's the olive bark scorpion. Sorry, olive burrowing scorpion, or bark, I can't remember. Anyway, here's the olive one. You can see it's olive coloured, and that's exactly what we found. That's the exoskeleton that we found. I don't think it's the same scorpion, unless he's migrated some distance. Isn't that lovely? So cool. You can see his fat little stinger there. You don't want to be stinged by him. Now, Siberia Zumi, you say, are there any plants out here or insects that are used for apothecary reasons? I think that's what you said. In other words, are there any plants out here, or not plants, are there any insects out here that are used in traditional medicine? Not many that I know of. There are one or two. I can hear some elephants shouting off towards the west of where we're standing now. That's in front of your screen. There is that one example that we found this year called the flea beetle that lives on a plant called Rusquenzii. And it's called a flea beetle because it jumps. It's a beetle that jumps. And its larva used to be used not so much for apothecary reasons, but for hunting and for, well, I mean, if you wanted to kill someone, you could use it. You take the larva and it's very toxic, and you spread the guts over your arrow, and you bing, your arrow at an animal or at your enemy, and they will die a very horrible and painful death. And that's a pretty useful thing to use the flea beetle larva for, I find. David, don't ever do that to me. I shall be very upset. Come on then. Bianca, you're in Australia and you're a new viewer, and it's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you for coming on our walk today. I hope you did your stretches before we went, like I did. Very physical job, this. Bianca, you want to know about... I'm just listening for elephants here. They are just in here, so we must listen carefully. I'm going to talk a little bit more quietly. You want to know about how many times a scorpion will change its skin. I don't know for sure, but with most of these animals, most of these invertebrates, it's normally about 7 times that they do it. So they're born pretty much resembling the adults, and then about 7 molts later, they become fully blown adults. So it's about 7 times, Bianca. Okay, now over here is a pile of white dung, which is very unpleasant. And the creature that made it, of course, is the creature that you're going to see now with Jamie.
Unfortunately, we have actually left our hyena for now. And the reason is I think that those cubs have gone to ground for the moment, especially because it is so cold this morning. But the fact that it is the temperature it is actually one of the reasons why I've left now. So most of you know that we've been treated to several amazing lion sightings over the last few days. And there is a rumor, supported by no small amount of fact, that there might be lion cubs hiding in a drainage line. Just on that subject, sorry, somebody wants to chat to me on the Game Drive channel. I think it might be Herbert. Standing by. Negative, no update from my side so far, but I went straight to me Sky. Okay, just quickly checking whether or not we've found any leopard tracks to follow up on. But yes, there's rumours supported by fact that there are lion cubs hiding in the drainage line around Gowrie Cut Line, which is supported by the fact that there was a male lion there yesterday. And I say that because I think the female that he was mating with, Amber Eyes from the Nkahuma Pride, actually brought him back, as she was looking for a little bit of company of a female variety, not of the male variety. And we're going to go and check there because I'm hoping the drainage lines or the river systems are the coldest place you can go on a morning like this morning. And it is really cold. I mean, it's really very cold. I mean, freezing. Brian is wrapped up in several million layers plus a blanket. I've got a hot water bottle in my jacket. It's quite chilly. And I'm hoping that it might sort of spark a desire in the female to take her cubs out of the drainage line and into a patch of sun somewhere on Gowrie Cut Line. It might be a long shot, but you never know. The cubs are getting to the age now where they will be out and about very, very shortly. They're close to 6 weeks of age, or they must be about 5 weeks old now. So they will be moving around, and she will be bringing them out of their den site more and more frequently. Now let us go and investigate. And it's an absolute pleasure. That, of course, is addressed to Anthony. Anthony, welcome as always to our Sunrise Safari. Anthony sent through a big thank you for listening to Game Drive channel. It sounds as though they did find leopard tracks on Juma. Sorry, Anthony. It's an absolute pleasure to bring you the wonder of the African bush. It still amazes me that we are at the stage where technology has reached the point where we can do that, and I don't even begin to understand how it all works, but I am very glad that it does. And of course we're very privileged to be able to spend as much time as we do in such a magical place with such wonderful animals. I'm actually not going to go any faster, it's too cold. And to another new viewer, Wendy, another good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari. We have left our hyena den for now, but I spoke in a little bit of detail about our hyena clan of Djuma. Now, from that you want to know how many hyena clans we have on the reserve. And the answer is we don't actually know. I mean, where we are at the moment within the Sabi Sand, we are open to the Kruger National Park, which makes it up to or close to 4 million hectares of unfenced area. And Wendy, because you're from Durban, you'll be familiar with the whole Kruger Park setup and how absolutely enormous it actually is. So I couldn't begin to tell you how many clans there are. I will tell you that we see one regularly, and that is the Djuma clan, and we've been trying to understand. Sorry, Wendy, can I put your question on a back burner for one moment? Just because there's lion tracks everywhere. Going in towards Mvubu Road. Okay, it is a little bit early still. The sun's not really up enough for us to see them clearly. But our lions have been wandering about here at some point during the night. These are fresh. And I know they're fresh because people drive this road very regularly. It's a main road. And a lot of them are still visible even when the car tracks have gone over them. This is the direction our mail went in yesterday evening on the sunset safari. So I'm going to change my route plan and we're going to do a quick loop around Mvubu Road and then up Gowrie Cut Line. I'm not going to hop out right now to show you what we're looking at. We can do that at another time. The fact that they've been lying in the road is also interesting. There's a flattened patch where they've been lying in the road. So they've been around. I just want to check here whether or not the tracks carry on east or if they go in towards Djuma, south towards Djuma. We're on our northernmost traversing boundary. Up, down, round and round. There's lion tracks coming out, there's lion tracks coming in. Our lions certainly keep us busy. These are fresh. But then, luckily, so are the tracks going back in. What I'm looking for, because I've now got tracks going in two directions, I'm looking for where they meet up and where one falls on top of the other. Wendy, I'm just going to concentrate a little bit on trying to figure out where our lions have gone. We'll get back. I will answer your questions when we come back through onto the back of Rusty. In the meantime, let's go over to James and see what his plans are on bushwalk.
I've just had another lesson, everybody, in this remarkable tree, which is one of my favorite trees, simply because it's got the most beautiful smelling flower. That's the Gardenia volkensii. Now, Herbert's basically given me a 20-minute lesson on this tree, but the most interesting bit of it was that you take the bark like this. If you're a trainee Sangoma, now Sangoma is a traditional healer in this area, a herbalist normally, and also a spiritualist in many ways. What you do is you take the bark off, a little piece of the bark, like say that, and probably a bit more than that, and you crush it up into a fine powder, and you put it into water. Now, if you look carefully at these branches, they're what we call decussate, and decussate means that they've got subsequent branches coming out at 90-degree angles. So you can see that there. You see the branchlets coming out at 90-degree angles from, or sort of horizontally from the vertical branches. Now, because of that, it makes quite a good beater. So you take a piece, say, from my finger here to there, and you can see it's got a good beating stick on it, and you beat up the solution, and it eventually will foam. And then if you're a Sangoma, to show respect, now Herbert, you must tell me if I get this wrong, what you do is you face away from the sun, so the sun is at your back, and you get on your knees, you put your hands behind your back, and then you drink that foam, if you're a trainee, and that, I suppose, is some way of cleansing the body, is that right? Would be cleansing your body and cleansing your mind, so that you may take on the lessons that you need to for that day. And I just think that's a really wonderful story of this tree. I had no idea. I knew that it was quite important. I didn't know quite how important. And then the other thing he told me was you take these little branches like this, and if you want to ward off evil spirits from your home, you take this branch and you take 4 pieces of elephant dung. And elephant dung is a great medicinal sort of what can we, I'm trying to find a Western term to sort of, to make it understandable. It's like an aspirin, I guess. It's got everything in it. It's a general purpose medicine, because an elephant eats just about everything. There are all sorts of different medicines in it. And so you take 4 pieces of elephant dung, you bury them at the 4 corners of your property, you pop that inside there, and these sharp points here will ward away the evil googlies that might want to come and harm you and your family. I think that's wonderful, and it's I guess there must be quite a lot of ritual involved in it, and the rituals, I suppose, are what keep well, they give you peace. I think they give you a certain sense of peace and comfort. I don't really know how else to describe it. Now, Jamie, of course, being what she is, highly skilled in the bush, has managed to find you some cats.
Well, I think that is very kind of James. There's also a wonderful element of luck here, but at least we picked the right direction following the tracks. And look who we found. It seems as though Blondie was not as deserted as I initially thought. He's doing some territorial marking. And what a lovely surprise this is. A wonderful way to start off our morning safari. It's definitely Blondie. We watched him disappear last night into the darkness, and I said that I thought he was trying to find the rest of his coalition. He has been distracted by the presence of the lionesses. There's one here, I'm relatively certain that will be Amber Eyes, who is looking longingly in the direction of her compatriot, another Nkuhuma Pride member who's been wandering about. She's actually trying to stay out of the way of the mating pair. She's moving right at the back there. I think she's actually going to disappear behind that termite mound. And that is probably the mother of those cubs. And the one thing that's immediately noticeable for all 3 of them is empty bellies. These are hungry lions at this point. She wants to go and follow that lioness, and he, of course, wants to stay with her. Deep, booming growls. Okay, we're going to... Okay, let's do this way. I think we're going to have to just try to follow them. It is what it is. It's going to be tricky. Oh, beautiful. That light is just stunning. We're going to stay with them because I think if I try and loop them, there's a chance we could lose them in this block. So everybody watch your heads. Ah, not this place again. I've done this, been through this before. It's a very tricky spot. I'm hoping they decide to take us to a road relatively soon and not straight through the middle here. Because this is where we followed them when they lost their kill to the hyenas. It's not an easy area. Watch out, Bebop. I'm gonna hit you. Where is that other lioness gone? Oh, listen to this. She is not impressed with him. She wants to play. Hey boy, you're causing chaos here. You're upsetting the apple cart. The ladies just want to be together and go hunting, and you're not making life terribly easy. Shame, he's very confused. Very, very confused. Can't understand why his lady friend is so terribly unimpressed with his presence. Okie dokie, let's try this again. I'm hoping we're going to be able to keep up with them. Let's stay with them for as long as we can. They keep getting up and lying down, but they're not going to stay lying down. They're going to keep moving. They're hungry lionesses. And lion, but he's got other things on his mind. The lionesses are a bit more focused on their breakfast. That's not Amber Eyes at all. That is not the female that he was mating with. This is a different lioness. How terribly interesting. And we've got a different combination here. As you can tell, there he goes, marking his territory. Although they glance across in our direction every now and again, our animals out here, despite being completely wild, are more than comfortable in the presence of the vehicles. Justin, are we ever afraid that they will get too comfortable? Ooh, she's cross. Too comfortable? No. Are we always wary? Are we always aware of the fact that they are wild animals and therefore unpredictable and potentially dangerous? Yes, absolutely. Especially a male lion that is courting a female and is often a little bit resentful of the presence of anything coming between him and his potential mating rights. We're always very, very cautious of that. There is a complacency that does occasionally strike out here. People get very used to the animals being very used to the vehicles, and they take it for granted and they push things, and that's when accidents happen. But hopefully that is a trap that we shall never fall into. Look at this, it's not Amber Eyes at all. Totally different in Kahuma female, and it's not the female with the cubs. Where is the other one gone? I've lost her completely. Oh, there she is. We'll have a look at her in a moment, but she's hidden for now. Hello, boy. Haven't you exhausted yourself with Amber Eyes? Are you really up for another 5-day session straight away? I'm most impressed. What I mean by that, of course, is he's just been mating with one of the other females, and it's not an easy process for a lion. It's a demanding one. 3 or 4 times an hour for 5 days is a considerable period of time and a certain amount of mating, which is why I'm surprised he wants to. He's quite so enthusiastically courting this female. Unless I'm mistaken and this isn't Blondie. I'll try and have a bit of a closer look at him. I think it is, though. All those scars across his face. Wonderful. The other lioness is hidden in front of us, but she's right behind a bush for now. I just wanted to try and see and try and work out who it might be. but we'll have to wait for our opportunity to do that. I don't think these lions are going to stay lying down. I think they're going to lead us on a mission through the block. I am, as I mentioned earlier, on the lookout for the female that is lactating. And the reason is I would very much like to find the den site where she's hiding her cubs, for us to know if it's in a good position, then we will be able to view them. If it's not, then of course we shan't, and we absolutely will not upset or push them in any way. Lucy in South Bend, Indiana, we were thinking, if we stumbled upon the den site by mistake, would she move them? No, probably not, actually. She'll probably be quite happy to keep them there. We've just spoken about how comfortable our animals are with our presence. Now, her den site on Torchwood was right on one of the main roads, which meant that the cubs were actually encountered several times during their time in that particular den site. Vehicles would come past and all of a sudden there were lion cubs right there. So they'd stop, behave very respectfully at a suitable distance, watch the lion cubs, and then move on. And it was only ever, we always knew where they were and what was happening at that den site, and she stayed there for a good 2.5 or so weeks. So no, the presence of vehicles itself or people is not automatically going to cause the lioness to move her den site. What might is if there's, say, an incursion of strange young male lions, even if Junior and his buddy decided to come back and pay a visit, she might try and move them closer to wherever the Birmingham boys are, because for all intents and purposes, they are the fathers of the next generation of cubs, and they will be invested in protecting them. So that's one of the few reasons why she might decide to move them. And then, of course, it's just parasite build-up. Aqua, you could well be right. It might not be the same male at all. I've been distracted by trying to keep track of what is going on. So let us, when we do have the opportunity, we will get a chance to see his face properly. I could be totally wrong. It might be a different male entirely, which would make a little bit more sense, because then he's probably been putting in the hard work courting another female of the Nkuhuma pride. The scars, well, I mean, they're all a little bit scarred these days. But Aqua, I'm not 100% sure. I think I might be mistaken. It might not be Blondie at all. We might be looking at a different male. It's definitely not number 3, I don't think. His tail strip didn't look thin enough. Here's our young lioness. I think this is the... girl, can you look at us for a second? Oh, no. Fair enough. I think this might be the youngest lioness of the Nkuhumas, but I'm not 100% sure. Those of you who are watching and who might have a way of determining whether or not it is, you can let me know if you think I'm wrong or right about that. I also want to know who the second lioness is. I'm very curious to know who she is. Hello, thank you, girl. No. Don't think so. It's one of the younger lionesses, but I don't think it's the youngest lioness. That she doesn't have all of those little nicks and cuts on her right ear. And there you go, that unique start again. The unique little spot pattern on her nose, that will change, of course, with time. Most importantly, we're looking at the whisker spot pattern, because that is what remains constant throughout a lion's life. So the way in which its whisker spots are arranged will tell you which lioness we're looking at. Now, those of you with screenshots to hand will be able to compare and contrast and work out which lioness it is. I don't think it's the youngest one. Now, I need to get onto the Game Drive channel and just chat. I know that Tax was interested in approaching, but only if they were not going into this terrible block. So let me chat to him quickly. In the meantime, James has found a termite mound.
Well, the point of this is not so much everybody, it's the fact that, well, it just offers an amazing view from here. Now, off to where I'm pointing is the Balanites tree out of which Brent Leo Smith plummeted during our during our rehearsals a couple of weeks ago, and Taxon found some wild dog tracks heading into this block. Now, that's about, as I can see the Balanites tree from here, and it's probably about a quarter of a mile away, and you know how fast wild dogs move, but they don't seem to have crossed out of this block, so we're just walking around here. It is quite a large block. I can see Herbert over to that side. And the other great reason for being up here, of course, is that the rising sun is on my face, and it's really very pleasant indeed. As David joins me, if your picture suddenly jerks and spins around, it's because David has plummeted from the top of this termite mound or halfway up it. And I must just apologize as you get a perspective of the view that I've got up here for showing you my legs in the sun. I am sure it must have been a disturbing sight to see such toothpicks this early in the morning. Now, there's the Balanites tree. It's a most wonderful view. Look at that great big green tree. Can you see, David? It's that very big green tree there. That's the Balanites tree, or the torchwood, after which Balanites Road gets its name. And as Dave pans to the right-hand side, you can just see this most wonderful view. Isn't that perfect? And I'm not sure how much ambient sound you're getting, probably very little. But there are a few robins calling behind us, some larks, some hornbills off to the east into the sun, and it is the most wonderful atmosphere out here. While we're just enjoying soaking up the rays here, let's go back to the lions, which are now moving.
And the lions presenting us with a little bit of a complicated choice here. They're splitting up, but they're not going to split up permanently. All that's happening is that the male is blocking the female from going where she wants to go, which is after the second lioness, who, by the way, I've confirmed is Amber Eyes. It's definitely Amber Eyes that is with this courting pair, and I can still hear that female growling away. She's not impressed with his blocking attempts. Okay, let's go. Let's keep up with them. I don't want to drive through there. Not with Wendy out of commission and only having one vehicle. I don't want to risk Rusty. But that's okay. We've still got Amber Eyes in front of us, and if we stick with her, I have no doubt these two are going to come out in front of us. There we go. She's going that way, girl. Thank you to Arcadia, who does think that it's the youngest female that this male is courting. You could well be absolutely right. And that we've got number 4 rather than Blondie. She doesn't look terribly impressed with life, does she? And of course, she's only just started reaching sexual maturity. She's only recently come into estrus, and even then we're relatively certain it's false estrus. Oh, shame. You can see how upset she is. Ears back. Him blocking her. And all the while, Amber Eyes looks back over her shoulder and watches what is happening. Hey, what's up, girl? I'm not terribly impressed with this. Now, this initial courting phase is because she isn't in full estrus yet. She's not ready to mate, but she is about to be. And he is making sure that she stays his and only his for the time being. Oh, so unimpressed. Desperately trying to get around him. Oh, what's she after? Oh, it's a scrub hair. And he's just barreling along behind in total confusion. That was a surprise. It's not often you lion hunt a scrub hare, and that's one very frightened scrub hare now. It's hiding somewhere in a bush, probably panting and re-evaluating its life choices. Dearie me. Don't push her north, please, mister. Lion courting is not always a peaceful affair. And she's very, very much unimpressed with his attentions. How stunning is this in this light? Absolutely awesome. Stopping to look back at us. She's only just reached that age where she's ready to mate, where she's of any interest to the males. And it's a bit of a rough time in her life. All she wants to do is stay with the other lioness. Amber Eyes has lost patience. She's on her way. The other lioness is blocked from following her. Now that they've settled for now, let's make our way a bit closer. Junebug's raised an interesting point, which is, do I think that they are trying to keep him away from the cubs? I don't think so. I don't think they are. It's entirely possible. You never know with wild animals, but I don't think that that's their intention. I think that they are more than comfortable to allow any of the Birmingham boys near the cubs, and in fact, they won't be able to prevent it in the future. So I don't think that that's the concern. I think she's just coming into estrus and he's protecting her. Absolutely awesome to watch their behavior. She's managed to almost sneak around him. Amber Eyes is still just over age. Let's try and catch up with them. So Junebug, it's a good point that they might be protecting the cubs. Lionesses definitely do that with strange males. They'll actually go into a false estrus and pretend to want to mate with the male in order to distract them and to stop them from killing cubs. But that's not the case here. I can't see Amber Eyes anymore. They're making their way straight towards where we were going, which is Gowrie Cutline. That's where we were going to start our search for lions this morning. I've completely lost track of Amber Eyes. I don't know where she's gone. I do know that she's hungry and that she wants to hunt. And so does this young female. Safari Dean has suggested that perhaps if he caught her some food, maybe bought her dinner first, that she might be more willing to participate in his attentions. And now that he's looked straight at me and I've had a closer look, it's very clear that that it is not the Birmingham boy that we had yesterday. Tax, are you coming from Gowrie Cutline side? Sorry, guys. Okay, copy. The one with fuzzies moved further east. This Marura won't let the other one follow. There's that deep growling again. He just looks a bit confused and almost indulgent whenever she growls at him. And slowly, slowly, meter by meter, she managed to sort of zigzag her way in the direction of the other female. Wow, we really have been treated to some amazing lion sightings recently. Tail. Okay. Once again, trying to get across in that direction. Must be terribly frustrating. The outcome, of course, will be that she will go into full estrus shortly, at which point she'll be relatively content to settle down with him. But I think that she would quite like to have a meal first, which I definitely don't blame her for. Copy that. Thank you, Tax. Apparently, Tax tells me that he has got amber eyes on the drainage line. Oh, sorry, not on the drainage line, on the termite mound in front of us, which obviously we can't see right now. I think let us wait here for the moment. She's not going to settle for long. Oh, she's in the tree. Oh, look at that. Okay, hold on, we are going to reposition. She's in a fallen marula tree. I hope she stays. We'll come back to the male and the female in a moment. Tax says she's just come down. Pity. Oh well, we got another view of our mating pair. She tries once again to get past. Well, I think this situation is going to play out in a very similar way over the next few hours. Now, there's some exciting news I've just heard on the Game Drive channel, and that is that wild dog tracks have been found. Let's go over to James.
Here are the tracks, everybody, of the wild dogs. Now, to track these things on foot, of course, almost impossible unless you happen to be a marathon runner. And with David dressed as he is, well, he is a marathon runner, of course, but he is carrying a very large pack. It's going to be impossible. But we might be lucky because they could have killed something around here, and then we might see them. There is the track. Now, it's quite difficult to make out exactly what I'm pointing at here. At the back, there's the back pad. You can see. So it's just like a domestic dog, and there are 4 front pads, and they're slightly exploded. So in other words, they're not close together like a hyena track. Hyena track, the pads are right in here. You don't get this ridge that you do around the back pad. So there are the 4 pads, and they're quite clearly, these dogs have been running. That's why this track is quite indistinct. There are claw marks round about where I've put my grass stick. Not easy to follow. We're going to just sort of head along the line that they were going, and if they've happened to kill something on the way, then we'll come across them. Now, wild dogs on foot are not a danger to human beings. They're a real joy to watch on foot. And this tree, however, is a great danger to me. Normally, if you can find wild dogs on foot and you sit down, they'll come and investigate you, and it's quite fun. In fact, it's exceptional fun, and it's a real kind of connection with something very wild. And so that's what we'll do. We'll head along here, but like I say, to actually track them on foot, well, I mean, it would be almost impossible. Now, Roger, you want to know what would happen if we encountered the lions in the bush, perhaps those lions that you're seeing. Normally, what a lion will do, let's pretend that a lion stood up where Herbert is there. If a lion stood up there, for example, most likely they would move off and look back, and they get up and they move off and they look like that, and then they carry on going. And if you back off, then they'll lie down again. Sometimes, if their blood is up, if they're angry at something, if they're tense, then they can stand up and growl, and they flick their tails, and they might charge. Now, they charge, and normally if you stand still, 99 times out of 100, if you stand still, they'll stop sometimes very close by, and it can be absolutely, well, it is possibly the most terrifying thing in the world, but they will stand. And interestingly, the lions you're looking at now, I think there's a bit of tension there. And so if I was to come across them on foot, they would most likely run, but you might get a little bit of an aggressive response. And remember, when I use the term aggression, I mean that they are feeling tense, they are likely to be easily threatened, and therefore to respond in a slightly aggressive fashion. They are not inherently aggressive. Lions are not inherently aggressive animals. The only inherently aggressive animal out here, David, is? Human beings, correct. Right, let's head along here. We're not going to, like I say, I mean, to actually track these things on foot, you're going to be running. But we might be lucky, because they have driven the road down to the south of us there. There is a road, and they've driven it, and they haven't had the tracks there. Now, Shamsun, you ask a very, very, very good question. You say, are the spiritual healers, the sangomas, the doctors, able to collect medicinal plants from the reserve? And the answer is largely no, they're not. And it's been the source of some contention. And of course, one of the major issues of South Africa is what we call land reform. And I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but most of you would go to sleep. Reform is a major issue out here, because of course, with our history, most black people were dispossessed of the land that they lived on. And a lot of that land was this conservation land that we're standing on now. And so it is contested land. It's contested. These are contested spaces. All conservation land throughout Africa is often contested spaces. And one of the reasons for that is that traditional healers can't come in and collect the plants that they want. There are some very progressive landowners in various parts that do allow people on to harvest and collect medicinal plants, and certainly that goes a long way to helping us protect these natural areas. But it's a really good question, and it's a source of some conflict, shall we say, in various parts of Africa, I think various parts of the world. You know that indigenous people that have been excluded from land that they used to live on and operate on provide contentious spaces, and that's not always it's a difficult balance to have, of course, because we know that the human population is far greater than it ever has been in our history, and therefore we have to protect land. But the unfairness of it here, especially in the African context, is that local people living in an area like this, at the densities that they did, would have an almost negligible effect on the wildlife. And it was only with the advent of European settlers and their guns and their voracious appetites for ivory and hides that we had the problem, that conservation became a necessity at all. So it's worth bearing that in mind as we wander through here. Shamsun, very nice question, thank you. Let's just go and get an update from Herbie. He's over here. We'll just see if he's got the tracks there. Hello, Michael. You say, how long does it take to learn Shangaan? Well, it depends. It depends entirely on what your home language is. I'll get back to you now. What do you think, Herb?
It's an update.
Yeah?
And they had some
Chitwa. Hoffman, okay. So they've crossed south, these dogs. They've gone across the reserve, right across here, and onto the reserve to the south of us. Should we just head to Treehouse Dam, maybe? Yeah. So we're going to go towards Treehouse Dam. It depends entirely, Michael, on what you learn as your first language. So if your first language happens to be isiZulu, for example, then you'll learn Shangaan very quickly. If it happens to be any of what we call the Bantu languages here, like Sotho, Venda, not so much Venda, but Sotho, certainly you'll pick up Shangaan quite quickly. But if your language is a Western language, like Afrikaans or English, then you're going to struggle to pick it up because it's completely differently structured. The words are unfamiliar, the structure of the language is completely unfamiliar, and the way you put things together is unfamiliar. So it took, I can speak it passably in a conversational fashion. Bad luck there, Davy. So I can speak it conversationally, and to a white man I sound fluent, but to a Shangaan I sound like a white man trying to speak Shangaan. And I mean, the trick eventually is to be able to fool a Shangaan into believing that they're talking to a Shangaan. And I'm a long way from that. And I've been living out here about 15 years. But if you learn it as a youngster, you learn it pretty quickly. And I mean, for example, the managers here, Mike Grover and his wife Candace, their little girl speaks Shangaan fluently, completely fluently. You'd never know that you were talking to a white girl if you heard her speaking Shangaan. She speaks very good English as well, but she speaks both. But as an adult, yeah, it takes a while. But you can do it. Let's say if you put real effort into it, you can become conversational in, say, 6 months to a year. All right, let's go back to Jamie, find out what her update is. We'll carry on down towards Treehouse Dam.
Well, we've arrived at a very perfect time to Buffelshoek Dam. Now, why have I left the lions, you may wonder? Well, it's because this week is a week full of surprises, and I have my reasons. I have very exciting reasons for having left the lions behind. Let's just stop for one moment and watch our elephants mill about and possibly come down to drink, because I'm waiting for my chance to enter into a very special sighting. And I'm not going to tell you any more than that. Just know that this is most definitely a week full of very pleasant moments. It's okay, Elise. They came racing down this way, and then all of a sudden everybody stopped before approaching the dam. They're clearly very thirsty, but something's got them concerned. Perhaps a smell. It's not us. It's definitely not us. But perhaps something came to drink earlier that was a bit smelly, and that they are a little bit concerned about, because they're not racing down to the water as they might usually be. Come on, guys, it's okay. Something's definitely made them anxious, clustering together a little bit. I wonder what it is. Perhaps they've just decided that's where they want to rest. Maybe it's not nerves at all, because it looks as though at the back some of the little ones might be settling down. Perhaps for a bit of a nap in the shade before they go down to drink. Hello, little one. What a wonderful way to continue our sunrise safari. It just gets better and better at this point. There's little one keeping up with the rest of the herd. I always feel for them a little bit. They've got to trot when an elephant herd starts to walk rapidly. Keep up with all of those long legs. Orbs, I'm at Buffelshoek Dam with Shlammy and Love. Just let me know when you're ready to pull out, but no rush at all. Copy that, thank you. Oh, there we go. Racing down to the water's edge. Oh, So excited, so excited. Now, Shamsun, you were wondering if there's the possibility of a crocodile. That's perhaps got them quite so anxious when they're clearly very thirsty. Oh, run, 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 run. Thirsty, thirsty, thirsty. Oh, thirsty, thirsty, thirsty. Wait for me, wait for me. Oh, this is too precious. The elephant water walk, as Brent describes it. Everybody pushing forward to a place there. Shamsun, it's always possible there's a crocodile around and about. I don't think there is in this case, but they never know for certain, and certainly you never ever take a waterhole for granted out here, even as a human being. Oh, their agility is just incredible. Thirsty, 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 thirsty. Oh, marvelous. A whole ring of elephants around Buffelshoek Dam. What a stunning view. Oh, little ones is standing by. Copy, Orbs, I'm on my way. Guys, I'm really sorry. We have to leave this incredible scene. Now, you know me and you know my love for elephants, and you know that I wouldn't, under any just any circumstances, leave such a special scene that we're watching. But I really do have a special eyes up my sleeve. So we do have to go. All right, little one. It's okay. It's okay. I'm sorry. It's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. I would love to stay, except that what I've got planned for you is actually even better. Well, not even better. Different. Different, and we aren't necessarily going to be able to see it all that often. Hello, elephant. Can I come past? No. Fair enough. Well, I mean, if the elephant says we can't go, then we can't go. Let's just wait for it to meander down. So while we move across towards Aubrey, let's go over to James, and hopefully when I get back to you, I will have a surprise.
Ooh, a surprise, everybody. I know what it is and you don't. But soon you'll be enjoying it, and I will not. Here is one of the last sort of succulent bits of flower, and it's a Waltheria, and many of you have seen these Waltherias before, and I stopped here because there have been so many spiders and other little interesting things that Steph has found on them. But I think all of those things are finished now, you know. I think they're all done. And that's the flower there. It's a very sort of inconspicuous flower. Now the other thing we've got here are two spiders. And I don't know if the actual spiders, sorry Dave, I don't know if the actual spiders are here or not. I don't think that they are. But they are minute. Their little nests of silk are tiny, tiny, tiny. Probably, I mean, they're less than, they're sort of 1/2 centimeter long each in diameter. And I can actually see a very, very, very tiny spider in there that you're not going to be able to see. If we had the microscope, we could show it to you, but we don't have that out here. And the spider itself is probably about 1/2 millimeter, a 1/10 of a millimeter. It is tiny, tiny, tiny. I can't believe that. I can't even point it out to you, it's so small. And it could be the male. I'm sure the female is a bit bigger than that. Now, anyway, all over here, all over this bush, we've got these little spiders and things trying to get through the winter, eking out a living. Some of them going dormant, some of them not, and some of them sort of trying to cope with the fact that there's no insect for them to eat except ants. And very few, I mean, this spider will probably be largely an ant-eater actually, because the ants will climb up the stalk here. They'll knock about on the inflorescence and try and get the seeds, and then the spider will jump on them. So those spiders, not orb-web spiders, they don't catch their prey necessarily in the silk. Tony, you're in London and you say my legs look inviting. Thank you, Tony. It's very kind of you. No one's ever said that about my legs before, Tony. You weren't obviously saying it in that context at all. You say, how often do we come across snakes out here? And because my legs look inviting. Tony, it's actually very rare that we come across snakes. I think we see far more leopards than we do snakes. And that's not to say that there aren't any snakes. There are plenty of snakes around here. But you'll find that what they do is they will hear you walking. So we walk along the ground like this, and it gives off a certain amount of vibration, especially if you're wearing boots the size of the ones that David's wearing and carrying a pack. And snakes then move away from us because they don't like to see us. We're a threat to them. The snake that you're most likely to come across that is a threat to a human being on foot is a puff adder, which is a sort of, it looks like a rattlesnake just about. And they are, just watch out there, David, you're going to fall over. What they do is they seldom move away. And so it's quite difficult. Sometimes, you can be walking along and you'll just stand on one. And if you stand on it, then it will bite you, and they bite very quickly. It's very unlikely that you're going to be bitten, but they can bite very quickly. And then I suppose, yeah, look, these boots are not going to be much help against a snake, and I might get a nip on the ankle, and that would be very painful. Apparently it's like being run over by a truck, the pain. And then you'd have to get to hospital quite quickly. But it's so unlikely that, I mean, it's much more likely that I would hurt myself spiking myself on a thorn. Ah, Nevin, what a very, very good question you ask. You say, if an animal like a snake has to shed its skin, but it's a vertebrate and it doesn't have an exoskeleton, kind of what's the difference between that and a scorpion that has to keep shedding its exoskeleton? Why does a snake have to do it? A snake has to shed its skin, I suppose, because it grows in segments, it grows in scales. And what you need to think about, or maybe consider, is when something grows in sections, and those sections are quite big, it's very difficult for them to grow simultaneously. If you've got, you have to have lots and lots of different growth points for those segments to grow at exactly the same rate, and so that everything fits neatly into each other. It's much easier for the skin just to be shed, and the snake can then harden. And that doesn't harden, but it becomes I suppose it just becomes slightly harder over a snake. But a snake's skin is not an exoskeleton. It doesn't give the snake firmness at all. It's just a protection from the sun and from the elements. Also, the other thing to remember is that with us, we're shedding our skin continuously. We're shedding the cells of our skin continuously. And a snake doesn't do that. A reptile doesn't do that. Its skin becomes old, climbs out of it, gets a new one. And it's not always to do with size that a reptile changes skin. Right, everybody. It is with great pain in my heart and great jealousy that I must hand you over to Jamie and the surprise.
Hello, everybody. On our live safari, I would like to introduce you to 3 identical little lion cubs and their mom, our new members of the Nkuhuma Pride. They've been hiding out on Torchwood. We've been patiently waiting for them to appear. And there you go, the first proper sighting of the Nkuhuma cubs after months and months of the sort of chaos in the lion dynamics and watching the tragedies of the Nkuhuma Pride unfold. to see these three little faces staring across at us. Well, it just doesn't get better than this, does it, Brian?
Nope.
And I'm so glad that we could share this moment with all of you. How absolutely precious are they? At about 5 weeks of age, still with their little spots. Somebody's gone to sleep. Imagine that you are all as thrilled and excited as we are. Oh, breakfast time. Oh no, whoopsie, whoopsie, whoopsie. Sliding off Mum. And that is why we had to leave the other lions. And that is why we had to leave the elephants. So now you guys can understand a little bit about my excitement. Oh, these two ones are so dozy. They're falling asleep sitting up. Ah, this is just too precious. Oh. Almost. Even the smallest obstacles seem pretty large when you're only 5 weeks old. Look at how spotted they still are. Whoops! Almost. Almost. Come on. Up you get. I'm sorry, I'm doing that thing I do when I see young cubs where I forget how to talk and I just giggle incoherently. But they're incredible. This is absolutely incredible. Well done, clever girl. Hey? Here we go, the lioness that we knew had cubs. Oh, and what a brood it is. The first time we are properly seeing lion cubs from the Mkuhuma Pride in a very long time. And this is what makes SafariLIVE so incredibly special. When we can follow a story from the end of one chapter to the beginning of the next. I hope you've all got your screenshot fingers working hard, because this is incredible. Clawing its way over Mum. Oh. This constant playfulness we were talking about and eagerly anticipating. Oopsie! We have been looking forward to this moment for so long. Mum, 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 Mum. Oh, she's gonna make life a bit more tricky. Oh, what an absolute pleasure this has been. And guys, it just goes to show you, for those of you who are concerned about the den site itself and our impact on them, they are not concerned about our presence at all. This is so cool. This is awesome. The last time I saw lion cubs playing like this on Juma was a year ago with the Styx cubs. So much has changed since then. I'm just thinking, I think actually our view might be improved now that they're behind the bush by feet in the air, by going backwards a bit, but let's just settle here for now. Even if it is through the trees, we can still get an idea of what their little mischiefs are up to. Using Mom as a jungle gym. Battering each other, and this is what we were talking about, that sort of constant play that lion cubs do with each other. Oh no, it's got its tail. It's pulling it backwards by its tail. Wow. This isn't where well, it is actually what we were planning for the morning. I just didn't expect it to actually happen quite so easily. And we have a huge thank you to say to Aubrey, by the way, who found them for us and called us in. And where are you going, little one? On an adventure. And the best part of this is that we have got so many more moments like this to look forward to. Oh, watching playful cubs tumbling over each other. At least one of the other Nkuhuma lionesses is pregnant or has given birth recently. And over the next few weeks we'll see the cubs coming together with the rest of the pride. And I couldn't be more excited about it. And hopefully the Birmingham boys remain the dominant males in this area and we get to watch these cubs grow up. Okay. There is another vehicle on its way because they are in a very easily accessible area, so we haven't gone off-road at all to reach them. So what they are doing is they're opening it up as decision from the head guides. They're opening it up to 2 vehicles, provided that there's only obviously one engine on at a time, and that we keep the distance that we currently have. And this playfulness, developing the skills that they are going to need for the rest of their adult lives. They're very fortunate to have siblings to practice with. Guys, I do just need to have a quick chat to Tax, who is in the other vehicle. I just want to know if he wants to... Oopsie. Whoopsie. I just want to reach over and chat to him. Can you guys see from there? Think. Okay guys, we're gonna just I'm just gonna move slightly. I'm actually gonna let Tax and his guests go ahead because we have had the most incredible view. So just hold on one moment. He's moving back so that I can move as well. We're just going to do some shuffling around. Hold on, let's see what Tax is going to do. Our page, while we do some repositioning and some shuffling around, we wanted to know if we know the sex of the cubs. And the answer is no, we don't. We won't know for a little while yet. It's very difficult to see. Tax? You guys go ahead. Okay. Since we have these guys to thank for our sighting, and it only stands to reason that we let them go a little bit ahead, So Paige, it's really, really difficult to tell the difference between a male and a female cub at this point, particularly with the view that we've had. We will get to observe them over the next few weeks and we will be able to tell. Their testicles haven't descended yet if there are any males in that group, so it won't be immediately obvious. And then the males will start to get a little bit of fluffiness around their faces, but we'll just have to wait and see exactly what the final outcome is in terms of males, females. What we're really hoping for, to be completely honest, is in terms of supplementing the Nkuhuma Pride's numbers, is females that will stay with the rest of the Pride for the rest of their lives. Of course, a young male is equally welcome, but I would very much like to see the Nkuhuma Pride go from strength to strength. Let's stop here for now. Let's go forward a little bit for now so that Brian's got a view of the cub at the back. We will have a chance to spend more time with them in a moment. Obviously, there are other people that want to get in and enjoy this sighting. Aqua, I haven't heard them making their adorable little squeals yet, but I have no doubt that they will at some point in the next few moments. They've got this, for those of you who are unfamiliar with lion cubs and who are not sure what Aqua's referring to, lion cubs make this adorable sort of ow, ow sound. Don't want to make it too loudly because obviously I don't want to distract them or impact them in any way. It seems as though it might be time to settle down for now. Have a little bit of a rest in the sand after all of that playing. As Mum watches on indulgently. Aretus is saying that these are your first lion cubs and that they have stolen your heart. Well, I don't think you're alone. I think that I'm so glad that we could bring this to all of you. We could share this moment with all of you watching across the world. You know, you can't help but fall in love with them. Oh, yummy. A little bit of elephant dung first thing in the morning. How awesome is that? Look what I found. I want it. I want that dung. This is so amazing. Really, truly. Absolutely incredible. Yes, absolutely. While we watch our lion cubs play and we compare them to our leopard cubs that we've been watching, and I agree with you totally. I do think that lion cubs play more than leopard cubs. I know that leopard cubs do play, but I think lion cubs play more, and I think that is because the leopards are destined to be solitary versus the lions, which are destined to be social cats. And who knows what lies in these cubs' futures. Imagine if it's a group of 3 males with the Birmingham and Nkuhuma genetics. The Nkuhumas are big lionesses. A coalition of 3 males would be a powerful thing. Or it might be 3... Oh, who knows? I'm speculating now. I can't help it. This is just too awesome for words. Guys, I just need to get onto the Game Drive channel. As I said, there are lots of people that would like to enjoy this moment. And as you can see, it's having no impact on the behavior of the cubs or the mom. Henry for Jamie. You are on standby 1 for the Zangala. Copy that. Taxis here. It is a 2-vehicle lock because it's nice and open. If you want to make your way, just let me know when you're close and I'll pull out. Copy that, no problem. Oh, this is so incredible. It really, really doesn't get better than this. There we go, Aqua. They are making a noise. They are making their little cub calls very, very faintly. I just heard one now. Oh! Poor Mom. Isn't she so incredibly patient with them? Those teeth are sharp. Lisa, while we watch them, you wanted to know what their chances of survival are, which is, of course, the question on everybody's mind. It's... oh, battering each other. This is where it does actually become important in terms of the sex ratio and whether they're males or females. Because around up sort of their first year, the cubs' chances, whether they're males or females, are exactly the same. And depending on the area, the other lion concentration, on a number of circumstances, you're probably looking at an average of about 40 to 50% mortality. After that, after about a year old, if the cub is a male, things change dramatically because, of course, then at some point in the next year and a half of their life, they're going to have to go off on their own. So between 2.5 and 3 years old, they leave the safety of the pride, and a young male is at much higher risk than a female. I've got my tongue back. The bush is full of toys, if you know where to look. This is so cool. This age, they couldn't be more cat-like if they tried. That's so awesome. Now we've got to hope that in terms of the survival chances of these cubs, if the Birmingham boys stay in power, then their chances of survival are much, much higher than they would be if another male takes over. Oh, shame, leave your poor mom's cheek alone. No wonder she was desperate for a break the other day. Just constant nipping teeth and scratching claws. And of course that does then beg the question, do lion moms leave their cubs alone for more or less time than leopards leave their cubs? Safari Dean, lionesses probably leave their cubs for slightly less time, but I don't think there's a huge amount of difference. Pounce. Oh, all over Mom's face. You see what we mean about lion cubs playing? It's just constant. Unless they are sleeping or feeding, there's this sort of a constant little lion cub puddle. Nipping teeth and waving paws. And positively any movement is pounced upon. You know, I think James might be right. I think lion cubs might actually be the cutest baby animal. No, I'm only saying that because I'm watching them. Oh, but they really are just so tiny. Ah, there we go. I've got my dung ball. I've hunted a dung ball, and I've caught it. Oh, but actually, whatever my siblings might be doing might, maybe not more interesting. Grr. I'm a fearsome predator, and I'm not to be messed with. Oh, I've got Mom's tail. One's got a pile of elephant dung, the other one's got Mom's tail. Now, of course, you can't really see exactly how big these cubs are. And Margaret in Kansas, with pleasure, I can give you a size approximation, although she's doing it beautifully, oopsie, for you. Where's Mom going, guys? Are you going with her? I wonder where she's off to. I think she's probably just going to lie down. But we're obviously not going to try and follow her. Definitely not going to be bashing through. This is such a perfect cub spot. Look how beautiful it is. So many sandy places and crevices where she can hide her cubs. Absolutely awesome. So size approximation, sorry, yes. They're about yay long and about yay big. So they're shorter than a house cat in terms of size. They're probably bulkier, they're stockier, but your average house cat is actually much taller than those cubs are now. That gives you a rough idea. They're about the size of, I cannot think of a 2-kilogram bag of potatoes, sort of. So a 5-pound bag of potatoes. I can't, for some reason I went blank there. I can't think of a good comparison. I just want to see what she's doing. I don't think she's come to the opposite side of the drainage line. Let's just go forward a bit because we are going to have to leave soon. The other vehicle is on their way. So while we reposition, let's go and find out how jealous James is.
James is very, very jealous and very cross and doesn't know really what to say. We did have an amazing, I know this is going to sound ridiculous to all of you, but we had an amazing sighting of a southern black tit sitting not 2 meters from the camera. This is typical that we should have had a sighting like that while you were looking at the lion cubs. Anyway, around here on the ground, we've got some male lion tracks. Now, they are not very big male lion tracks, but that indicates that they are probably Birmingham boy tracks. And I'm just going to get an update from Herbert down here as to how fresh he thinks they are. There you can see one there. Now, one of the ways to tell how fresh a track is to see what is on top of it. Okay, so if we go down the road here, David, if you wouldn't mind moving your leggies out the way, thank you so much. There we have some civet. Now, we know that civet are nocturnal exclusively. We know that the civet probably was around, I don't know, sometime between 10 o'clock last night and, say, 5 this morning. And there's the lion track. Now, we've got to find out. And let's ask Herbert here what he thinks. Herbie? Yeah, okay. So over here, and it's because the light isn't so good over here, you can see here that the civet actually, let me get something finer than the end of my stick. Here's the lion track, right? You got that, Dave? Yeah. And on the top of the front toe here, you can see a civet track. Now that civet track is on top of the lion. Now, that means that the lion probably walked down this road prior to 10 o'clock last night, which means trying to track him, well, would take probably longer than we have on, well, certainly longer than we have broadcasting today, and we're quite close to the southern boundary, so he's probably crossed. But if you look right next to here, you can see another track going up the way. Now, I suspect quite strongly that this male lion is the one that you had at Mvubu Road. There were reports of him drinking earlier on at 5:30 at the Djuma Dam Pan. That's about, it's probably about It's probably about a mile in that direction. No, I didn't see anything. I thought I had. Probably about a mile in that direction. And then Mvubu Road another half mile up to the junction with the Buffalo Cut Line where you saw the males earlier. So I would suspect that that's who that is. It might not be, though. So Herbert will make the decision as to whether these things are worth following or not. What do you think, Herb? Too old? Same one that they had. Yeah, he agrees with me that it's the same one that we had. That's always heartening when someone like Herbert agrees with your tracking assessment. It makes you feel very skilled. Probably a false sense of security. Right, let's go through here. We're probably going to head down towards Twin Dams Road. And I'm sorry, it seems like those lion cubs are disappearing, but Jamie might be able to get another view of them. And of course, one couldn't hope for a nicer person to be viewing the lion cubs than young Jamie. Oh, Kyle, you want to know what I'm going to name the 3 cubs? I think 1, 2, and 3 are probably very good names. What do you think, David?
That sounds good.
I think 1, 2, and 3 is an excellent name. I don't know, Kyle. I don't know why I've developed this reputation, because I was the very last person who would ever name an animal before I came here. And it's just my leopard cub names that I really like. I'm quite precious about those. But otherwise, for the lions, I don't know. I'll have to see them first, I guess. We do have to, very soon, find some names for those hyena cubs. They can't be June, obviously, because last year we had June ones. Let's go through here, Davy. Last year we had June cubs. And obviously we can't call, well, we had 1 June cub, male. Well, I suppose we could, no, we can't really call these ones June 16. And June 16 1 and June 16 2. That's just very uninspiring. I mean, if we were scientists, then we might. But we aren't. So I don't think we will. Now, Jamie, I'm afraid, has got some fairly poor news for you. It's not tragic by any stretch of the imagination, but it's fairly poor. So let's go and get it from her.
I'm afraid to say our poor news is that the lioness moved out of where we could see her. Taxon could still get a little bit of a view, but we couldn't. And as I said, there was another vehicle that was coming into the sighting. So we have left for now, and I'm trying to decide where I want to go from here, because I've just got a grin plastered all over my face. And the even more exciting news is that Aubrey, now bearing in mind, of course, that Aubrey was the one that predicted that she was in that drainage line about a week ago, when we first started looking for her, about 4 days ago. Aubrey thinks there's another female in there with cubs as well. And he thinks that's where that female was off to. He thinks she was going to go and meet up with the other female with young cubs. So how exciting is that? We're not going to try and push through after her. We're not going to try and follow her. But it is exciting prospects for the future. And I don't know where the morning's going to go from there, but I'm pretty sure that's been one of my best mornings so far since I started working at SafariLIVE. It's been a long time since I've had a good view of lion cubs. Ah, that was incredible. So I really hope you all enjoyed that along with us. Now the decision was to make it into a 2-vehicle sighting, and that's because of the age of the cubs and the level of comfort that they demonstrated with the vehicle, as well as where we were. Now the other day, for example, when my previous surprise, which was Shadow's cub, that was a 1-vehicle sighting only due to the circumstances of the sighting and the environment that the sighting was in. Now Marianne, you wanted to know who are the guides that make the decision on the sighting itself. Well, it will usually be the head guide of an area. So in this case it was Taxon's call, because this is Juma and he represents the sort of the head as the head guide of Juma. But Taxon and Aubrey are kind of pretty much on equal footing there. And when we were at Shadow's Cub, it was Ryan who is the head guide of Arethusa. All of that being said, if you're in a sighting, let's say I approached and I found Karula on a kill with her cubs, and it was very, very dense, very thick vegetation, it would be within my power to close the sighting if I felt, or I'd speak to Taxon and ask him to close the sighting. If we feel that it is in any way putting undue pressure on the animal, and that happens more regularly than you might think. We actually do it as guides, all of us will do it for any sighting where we feel like the pressure might be a bit too much. If you brought in another vehicle, the Anderson male, for example, he's usually a 2-vehicle leopard, just because he has a tendency to not, as soon as a 3rd vehicle joins the sighting, he becomes a little bit more uncomfortable with the situation. So it's the guide at the sighting and the head guide's decision. Just want to have a look at the tracks that are all over this road. Bear with me one moment. Yes, I thought so. Lion cub tracks. So this is where they came from this morning. I'll show you. I think I'm looking at lion cub tracks. It's really, they're such funny little shapes. They look so different. I am looking at lion cub tracks. And they are so much bigger than you expect them to be. At first I almost thought I was looking at baboon tracks here, but I'm not. It's little lion cub tracks. Their feet are surprisingly large for the size of the cubs themselves. So if you bear with me 1 second, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and unhook myself. I'm a bit attached so that I can show you exactly what I mean in terms of scale. Before we start heading back to the other lions that we started our morning with, I think that's our plan. We're going to have a lion-filled morning. Am I completely crazy? Because I am actually completely crazy, I'm sorry. Now that I look at them from this angle, they're just really, really big baboons. Enormous baboons. I'm looking here at the back pad, but what I missed is the thumbprint over here. So this is not a lion cub track. I wondered, lion cub feet are big, but they're not that big that soon. Sorry. The cubs have addled my brain. Those are baboon tracks, not lion tracks. Their toes just confused me for a moment. Right, well, while we head over to the lions, let's go and find out what on earth James is doing. I've got my ridiculous hat on. It looks as though James has found himself a hat of his own.
Mmm. Delicious, David. It's like little chocolate peanuts. It actually is really not bad at all. Tastes like freshly cut grass. There's a bit of bacteria in it. Don't do that, kids at home, unless you know exactly what it is. This, we think, is probably from a water buck. Very old, not fresh at all, just like dry grass. What I really wanted to show you, however, was this tropical tent web spider over here. Now, I don't know where the spider has gone, but it seems to be AWOL, and I think that's probably a function again of the cold, and the spider may well have gone dormant or indeed disappeared for the duration of the winter and maybe have died. But this looks so well maintained that I don't think that's the case. I suspect the spider is somewhere on this tree and just is not showing itself. Just look at the unbelievably intricate lattice work here. And the other thing you should look for, I think, is in the middle of the nest there, Davy. That thing in the very middle, I've just realized, I think is an egg sac. And while it certainly began its life, that sort of silky bit in the middle, as a repository or a sort of it's the same thing that the golden orb web spiders do. What they do is they create a ball in the middle of the exoskeletons of the animals that they've eaten, and what that does is deter very large things like birds from flying into this nest, because this would be a good place for something like a waxbill to come and eat insects from. But they don't want the waxbills here, because the waxbill will destroy this incredibly intricate nest in seconds. So they leave the exoskeletons in that pile to warn off birds like the waxbills so that they don't come and fly into these webs. But inside there, I think what you'll find is that the spider has probably laid her eggs. And I can't actually see any, but I suspect that's quite strongly that that's what's going on here. Just wonderfully shining in the early morning light. Right, David, would you like to eat some of this, or you?
No, thanks, James.
Are you sure? Yes. You normally take a snack on drive.
I'm quite alright for now.
Just a little bite. No. You're quite sure? It's really quite nice. Okay, well, on we go, everyone. Okay, so we're going to walk down here. Herbie's just heard some oxpeckers, and we've got to be very careful because there could well be some buffalo, there could be impala, well that's okay, there could be some kudu, could be all sorts of things, but buffalo is what we're watching out for here. Oh, Christopher in Arizona. I'm going to ask Herbert this question right here. Herbie, we've got a question. Do you know what acne is? Acne. It's, you know, when you get pimples on your face. Are there any plants here that people can use to heal that? You know, when you're a young man, when you, that acne that you get, are there any plants?
Yeah, like I said yesterday, that the mixture of the bar that we have is for blood purification.
Right, that will help.
Rid of the pimples.
Okay, brilliant. So I don't know if you heard that. I don't know how well the sound's picking up Herbert's voice there. But we picked up a bulb yesterday of a lily, and you mix that up with elephant dung or with various other plants, with Natal guarri, magic guarri, apple leaf tree,
the
white berries, and you mix that up, and you can put it on the, you rub it on the skin, you take it internally. You suck the juice out of it, and then your pimples will disappear. So that's a really great acne cure. I wish I'd known about that when I was a young fellow. Dreadfully afflicted I was. David, were you afflicted by acne at all?
Luckily not.
You were very lucky, David. Yes. Mine, of course, came when I was 20. This is because I only hit puberty when I was 18. And, you know, it's all very well having it when you're 16. You can cope with that. But when you're 20 and you're supposed to be a virile young man trying to convince ladies of your worth, it's not very nice when you have acne at that age. Anyway, it's gone now, David. It's been replaced by a substantial beard. It shows how very manly I am. Right, let's not talk nonsense now. We must be quiet because there were some oxpeckers up. Now, oxpeckers you've got to listen to when you're walking through the bush because they go psst, 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 and you've got to listen out for that because they're alarm calling and warning the animal that they're with that there are potential predators in the area. Now, Justin, you want to know what the most aggressive antelope is? Remember, Justin, aggressive is a little bit of a swear word in my vocabulary to describe animals because I don't believe that they are inherently aggressive. Most defensive, interestingly, is probably not something that we get here. The gemsbok, or oryx, those huge scimitar-like horns, can be quite not so aggressive, but they're very defensive. They get attacked by lions quite a lot. The antelope that kills, that has the most the antelope that causes the most intraspecific death is the waterbuck. So waterbuck kill each other more than any other antelope do. So I suppose you might describe that as fairly aggressive behavior. So let's go with waterbuck out here. For humans, you threaten a duiker sufficiently, it'll terrify the wits out of you. A duiker will do some very serious damage. I know that sounds completely ridiculous. When a duiker stands at sort of knee-high, if you like, that's how tall a duiker is. And apparently they can get very, very nasty if they want to. Right, Herbie can hear something here. We're just going to walk down here slowly and carefully. He's spotted something now. Impala. So they're there we go, I've got them here. There. Davy, there's some impala there. Just running through here. You'll just see their shapes moving through the bush. You see them? Come over here, you'll get a slightly better view. Now, those impala would have had oxpeckers on them. The oxpeckers eating the ticks. And you see them? And the impala now moving off because they've seen us. They don't really know what we're doing. It's a very difficult view, everybody. They're right in the woodland there. But the other thing that I've just seen is a squirrel. But I think it's moved as well. How typical. You see it there? On the termite mound?
No.
On the dead tree. Right, let's just go quickly this way and see if we can spot this squirrel. And we can also see the impala from here. They've come over here. Yeah, those impala are a disaster area. In fact, I think the squirrel is probably also a disaster area. So while we try and get a decent view of the animals in here, let's go across to Jamie and get an update on her plans for the next hour.
Oh, I've also found some very non-aggressive antelope. They are the exact opposite of aggressive, as James pointed out. Some more impala, slowly warming up, but still that deep red colour that they get first thing in the morning and in the evening when they fluff their coats up. And there's an alarm calling squirrel. Why is the squirrel alarm calling? I know James was following up on one. It sounds like I mean, I don't speak squirrel nearly as well as the master trackers do, but it sounds a little bit like it's alarm calling at a bird of prey. Well, let's go investigate, since we're right at Buffelshoek Dam, and you never know, Gajima might be around. Or any one of our leopards, actually. Buffelshoek Dam does form the territory of several, sort of the boundary of several different leopard territories. Gone quiet for now, but something did unsettle the elephants when they came through to drink. When we stopped here a little bit earlier, they've all moved off. But let's see if there's not something coming down to drink. All is quiet at Buffelshoek Dam. And the squirrel's gone quiet too. We're very fortunate. We get to travel along in the back of the vehicle, and James is on foot. Just while we watch the blacksmith lapwings, it gives us an opportunity to talk about the other general safari forms. Gary, in terms of whether or not you can use a horse on safari, you can. There are definitely companies that do horseback safaris in Big 5 game reserves, and you can often actually approach on a horse to, the animals will let you get a lot closer than they would if you were that sort of bipedal human walking form. So James has to be extra careful when he's wandering about. Animals generally let horses get a little bit closer. The horses that they use for those sorts of safaris are unbelievably well trained. I know somebody who does do horseback safaris, and apparently it's all about the training that they give to the lead horse So the one that the guide rides. Personally, I have been on horseback safaris before in game reserves. I get a little bit nervous because a horse is, it's very much like a zebra or a buffalo. It is very much on the menu for things like lions, and it's the lions that you've got to watch out for. Unless you've got complete and utter control, you'll find that the places that do those sorts of rides will only accept riders that are competent. That it's not for novice riders. How on earth they manage to train, and I mean, my friend has told me stories of riding through close to riverbeds, and then all of a sudden the bushes erupt in a cacophony of lions growling. How on earth they train those horses not to gallop away straight away, how they get them to not run, because obviously that would trigger the hunting instinct of those lions, I find absolutely phenomenal. And personally, it's just a personal opinion, because there are places that offer horseback safaris. I don't feel, perhaps it's my riding skill as well, I don't feel terribly comfortable riding where there are lions. It does make me very nervous. But it's a lovely way to approach if you find yourself in a nature reserve. So with the sort of general game, the antelope, giraffe, anything like that, it is actually a lovely way to experience the bush. And I have done it a few times. It's very, very special. So I'm not sure if you're a horse rider or not, Gary, but it is definitely within the realms of possibility. Sorry, Blacksmith Lapwings, we didn't even really talk about you. We got distracted by talk of horses. It was something that I remember we were tricked with in terms of our tracking assessment that I did many years ago. The reserve where I was doing the tracking assessment did do horseback safaris, and the guy who was assessing us ended up asking us about whether or not the track we were looking at was a horse track or a zebra track. This is actually now in hindsight a really easy question. A horse track is about triple the size of a zebra track. Right, well, we continue on towards our lions. It seems as though James has found something very interesting, some signs in the soil for him to interpret.
Signs in the soil, indeed. If you look along here, there's a scrape mark watching along my stick. Now that is where something has been dragged, and if you follow the drag mark sufficiently, what you do is you come to a track. And this track, which looks quite like a civet track, is not a civet track. It's got 3 lobes at the back, and you can't really see them there. But quite possibly a caracal, a small cat that is a little bit like a lynx. Could be something like a serval, but a serval doesn't catch things like duiker or steenbok. A serval catches mice and rats and other things like that, whereas a caracal will take much larger prey and then drag it into a hidey hole. So let's just follow down here. I'll show you where it goes. Herbert's down over this direction here, just double checking. Now, we've never seen a caracal here. I know some people have, but I've never seen a caracal here, and they're not usual at all. And in the dry parts of the country, they're very common, actually. And there's a really nice segment on the caracal trying to catch guinea fowl on that wonderful BBC production, The Hunt. And it looks like it's called a rooi kat in Afrikaans, which means a red cat. And it's sort of a very rich red russet colour with those long sort of pieces to the ears. You're right there, Davy. And it would be really something of a boon to see one. I think the chances of seeing one on foot here are almost negligible, but it's nice to know that they might be around. It's difficult to know what else it could possibly have been. So it's dragging here towards this huge mound with the scotia on it. Weeping boerbean is what it is in English. There's a hole there. It wouldn't necessarily live in a hole, but it would drag its kill right underneath some very thick bush. And they are so secretive out here. They're not active in the day at all, simply because of the hyenas and lions and leopards and other predators that are around here. In areas where there aren't other predators like that, well, you can see them in the day and they become quite confiding. Stands about sort of yay high off the ground, maybe a bit lower. Weighs about 20 kilograms, 20 to 25 kilograms. So in some places, a very big male caracal, like in the southwestern Cape, can be almost the size of a female leopard. But very unusually, that would be very unusual. But I don't think we're going to be lucky with a caracal on foot. That really would be quite something. Let's just go pop up here a second. See? No, it's an elephant drag mark. Now, the last time I came past this tree, there was an elephant standing up here. Now, what I want you to do is follow David. David's going to follow up this termite mound with me. Okay? Now, notice how wobbly the picture gets as Dave climbs. That's not in any way because David is incompetent. It is because it's a very steep termite mound. Now, for an elephant to have climbed up here, I think it's quite something. We tend to think of elephants as being fairly galumphing and not particularly agile, but elephants climb very well. Then at the top here, Dave, I'm afraid you are going to have to come all the way up here. At the very top here, we have what's known as a bracket fungus. Look here. It's a really beautiful sort of shelf of fungus that's grown out of the heartwood of this tree. And it's not very edible. In fact, I think it's completely inedible. But I think it's quite interesting that it's managed to make its way out of the heartwood of this scotia, or weeping bourbean tree, which is an evergreen. You can see one of the few evergreens that we have around here. Marvellous. Herbert's headed off that way, so let's follow him. And I'm not sure that he's going to... I'm pretty sure he's not going to find the caracal. But, you know, you never know. Now... David, don't fall down like I just did. Hello, Catherine in Texas. You're asking about eye cures, and you say tannic acid or tannins, which can be very good for eyes. Are there plants here that are used for, or the tannic acids that you'd find in tea leaves? Do you find them in some of the plants here? Yeah, you do. Absolutely. I'm not an expert in the different kinds of tannins that you get here. Generally, eye ointments here are made of snail shells. I think because they probably make a very sort of basic or alkaline or mildly alkaline solution, which is probably quite soothing for eyes in much the same way that milk might be considered soothing for eyes. You also get something called a round leaf teak, which I don't see an example of here, but that can be crushed up and used, soaked in water and used as an eye ointment. But they're not particularly rich in tannins, I don't think, so I'm not sure about that. Tannic acid. I've actually never heard of tannic acid. I've only heard of tannins, and I wonder if they're the same thing. Right, we're going to turn slowly to the north now and see what we can find on our way home. We're right near Twin Dams, so we're quite far to the south. And while we do that, Jamie is back with the adults who are trying their very best, or certainly the male seems to be, to make some new cubs.
We have arrived back at where we left our courting pair not too long ago to go and follow up on those wonderful cubs. And as James said, the male very intent on producing the next generation of little ones. Now apparently while we were away, a second male came and joined in the chaos. He's since moved off with another female further to the south, deep into the very tricky block that I was talking about earlier. So what I mean when I say block is a part of the bush that's between the roads, where we would have to off-road to get to them, and we don't know exactly where they are. So for now we're going to stick with our lions. The female, it appears, has decided to give up in terms of attempting to rejoin the other females. Now they're just doing what lions do best, which is having a quick snooze in the morning sunlight. A nice warm spot that they have found themselves. We spoke yesterday about the scars that the Birmingham boys now wear as a testament, in a way, to their dominance in this area and the stories that those sort of scars tell. Now, just to go back to the conversation we were having, I was talking about how important it is that the horses that do safaris in Big Five areas are so well trained so that they don't run away from a growling lion. And Joey, you were wondering if a lion chases a zebra or a wildebeest or a buffalo or something similar, and that animal doesn't run away, if it stands its ground, will the lions still attack it, or will they actually give up? Will they be intimidated in any way? It very much depends on the situation, the scenario. Buffalo is probably the best example, since we know that very often buffalo can actually turn the tables on hunting lions and occasionally chase them, depending on how many lions there are and what the circumstances of that situation may be. If there's a male lion, then there's not an animal in the world out here that isn't most likely going to run away. If they're clearly being hunted, even standing their ground would actually be a very foolish decision, because yes, the lions would follow through. Although you're right, there might be a period of confusion where they'd kind of stop and go, why are you doing this? What are you doing? Why aren't you running, as you should normally be doing? But that, I think, would be overcome very quickly. Let's say it's an injured animal that can't run away. The lions will pick up very quickly on the fact that it's still not a threat, and they will attack it, and they will try and kill it and eat it. You can't really come between a lion and their food. And there's not many animals out here that can fight back. Buffalo are probably the only ones in that size category. Elephants, of course, are a completely different story. And if an elephant comes running towards the lions, then chances are the lions are going to get up and run away. He's looking up every now and again. He probably knows that his buddy is not too far away. That's because I can hear them. I can hear them too, boy. Can we go investigate? Because that sounded to me like mating sounds. I'm starting to lose track now of everything that's going on with our lions. There's just lions everywhere. That definitely sounded like they were mating to me, and not terribly far away. I think we should go spend a little bit longer with him and then go and investigate. They're not far from us at all. So, the Nkuhumas and the Birmingham boys, very busy lions, either raising new cubs or making new cubs, all on one glorious Wednesday morning. I'm getting very good at this day of the week thing. I'm actually keeping track of it now. A courting couple, for now at peace. And I wonder if the Birmingham boy that we're watching isn't feeling a little bit regretful as to his choice of companion, since it sounds as though his brother-in-arms, so to speak, his coalition mate, has had a little bit more success here. I wonder which female it is. I'm now completely confused. I'm losing track. A nice thing, of course, is that there's plenty of options to go around. There's 4 Birmingham boys. There's 3 Nkuhuma lionesses that are going to be, or maybe even less than that, maybe even 2, that are ready to mate. And Steve, that's a good point. Since we do know that male lions compete for access to the females, will the females ever argue over another male or compete for the attentions of one male? It's relatively rare, They do get a little bit more short-tempered when they're in estrus, so they might snap at each other, but for the most part, no. Now, there's some famous sightings of female leopards that have both been in estrus at the same time and have basically taken turns in sharing the same male. I haven't heard about it happening with male lions, but I wouldn't be surprised if the females were just content to share. They generally don't fight in the same way that male lions do. A pregnancy for a female during her lifetime, or several pregnancies for a female during her lifetime, is pretty much an inevitability. At some point they will have unimpeded access to a male. Males, not so easy. It's not a guarantee. They have to fight for their right to pass on their genetic lines. The females know that at some point the males are going to be lining up to pass on their genes through them. So they don't really have the same level of competition. And especially when they're all pride mates, they're all related to each other, which means that their sister having a baby or having cubs, or their mom having more cubs, basically it's their genetic line that is being propagated regardless. So it's not too much of a concern. It's the same reason why, for the most part, members of the coalitions, male lion coalitions, they'll know they'll have an opportunity to mate at some point. So the conflict is relatively minimal. And they're probably more likely to fight over food than they are over access to the ladies. And a lot of those scars that the male lions wear, the Birmingham boys, quite a few of those may well have been inflicted, not necessarily in fights with other males from other coalitions. They might even have come from the coalition members themselves, since a little bit of friction is not uncommon. They will fight each other for females, don't get me wrong. It just doesn't happen as commonly as you might expect. He is restless, and I think he feels like he might have got the raw end of the deal here. He's got to be a little bit more patient if this is the young lioness, because she's not quite ready. She's not quite in full estrus. And a lovely question from Roger, speaking about a male lion priorities. If we spoke about the fact that the lions that we're watching this morning are hungry, there's no denying it, they are very keen for a meal, the females in particular. Now Roger's thinking, what happens if the pride members make a kill? Would the males be keen to join, or would they be more preoccupied with the thought of mating? I think, Roger, most likely they would join in, with the usual level of aggression that is always around whenever lions share a meal or a carcass of some description. So yes, he probably would steal the carcass. He'd probably eat as much as he could, as quickly as he could, and then move back to the female. It is an interesting scenario, though, because you have got a clash of two very fundamental instincts in that situation, because on the one hand, the male lion doesn't want to let the female out of his sight, and on the other, he wants to sate his hunger. So it might just depend as well on how far into her estrus cycle the female actually is, and what the chances are of another male sneaking in and mating with her while the male's preoccupied eating. And of course, there's no rule book, and there's no exact answer to those sorts of questions. It's very circumstantial. And he looks relatively content for now. As we spoke about yesterday, the champion sleepers of the animal world. They are exceptionally good at it. And the quick doze is a quick cat nap is a very easy way to pass the time until the lady might be a bit more receptive to one's advances. Just a quick update to keep you guys informed. It looks as though which is the same thing that happened to us yesterday when Brian and myself were out on bushwalk. It looks as though the bushwalk backpack, we're having some minor battery problems, so nothing's happened to the bushwalk team. They are absolutely fine. They'll probably be heading home for the remainder of the sunrise safari, which was to be, we did have a suspicion that that might occur. We just seem to be having batteries drain in a very strange way. Well, since that is the case, and James will be heading back for camp, let's go and investigate and go see if we can't find these other lions, because they're not far from here, and it does sound like they might be a little bit more inclined towards certain activities than these two here. Thank you, boy. We'll come back to you if we don't have any luck. A lion-filled morning on Juma. Now, of course, the Birmingham boys are not just fathers to Nkuhuma female cubs. They are also proud fathers of the Styx cubs that have been wandering about, so the other pride over which they are dominant. Shamsun, no, I haven't heard any updates about the Styx cubs. As far as I know, they are alive and well, but I will chat to some of the other guides from the other lodges that get to see them more regularly. The Styx only occasionally pop their noses onto Juma, onto the southern side of Juma or around Cheetah Plains. They don't often come and join us in our traverse areas, so we don't get to see them all that often. I'll double check for you, Shamsun, and I will confirm on the sunset safari whether or not or what they're up to. Okay, let me just think about this. Where did I hear the sounds coming from? It was just here. Oh, it looks as though somebody's already been... Oh, there they are. That was easy enough. A second Birmingham boy and a lioness in store. We really have been a little bit spoiled this morning in terms of our lion sightings. While we attempt to figure this one out, we find ourselves with a relatively tricky situation in terms of getting to these lions. Let's try the other approach, which is to go around. Joseph, you want to know what the closest encounter I've ever had with a lion? I've had a few very close encounters. What sometimes happens is that when they're fast asleep and you're walking through the bush, you accidentally encounter them without... I mean, at the moment the grass is short and it's difficult to imagine how you could ever not see a lion. But when the grass is very tall and the lions are lying flat and they haven't heard you, you do occasionally find yourselves a little bit closer than anybody really intended or indeed wanted. Let's just see which lioness this is. I think it's Amber Eyes. And then we'll have a look at which Birmingham boy we've got here in a moment. Joseph, I once went tracking a lion, didn't realize he was sleeping in the bush in front of me, and we were probably about, I would say, about 10 feet away from each other, 9-10 feet away from each other when we both realized. Luckily for me, his instinctive response, as with most lions, was to go brrr and run in the opposite direction. And I also once accidentally came between a mother and her cubs, totally, entirely accidental. I had no idea she was there. That was also an interesting moment. And then, you know, we have plenty of close encounters with the vehicles because the lions feel comfortable enough in our presence and they trust us enough that they are happy to walk up to the vehicles themselves. We don't ever drive to them. We would never ever drive that close to them, as close as they get to us. We let them make that decision. They were playing hide and go seek. What it does come back to, though, Joseph, is remembering at the start of the sunrise safari we spoke about being complacent. Very important that we never find ourselves falling into that trap. So if they are ever close to our vehicle, we're paying very, very close attention to what they are thinking and what their plans are, and if they're in any way irritated by our presence. I'm relatively certain this is Amber Eyes. I'm not 100% sure which Birmingham boy we've got just yet. Oh boy. And where on earth the other Birmingham boy was hiding this whole time. Looks like Blondie. Or maybe not, I can't tell at this angle. Giving himself a jolly good clean. I actually had thought that Amber Eyes was finished with her estrus cycle. So in other words, coming into heat and being ready to mate. But the sounds that we heard earlier from when we were with the other lion pair definitely sounded like mating sounds. The deep growls from the female and the very strange, almost whiny sounds that the male makes. There we go, James Richard is thinking along my lines, which is whether or not she would still be giving off an indication of estrus, even though she may be finished, which might be confusing to them. And yes, of course, there will definitely be residual hormones that will mean that the males might still show a little bit of interest in her. However, they usually know when a lioness is finished mating with them, and if they don't, she usually lets them know quite unequivocally with a couple of growls and maybe even swats with her claws to their faces. I want to stay with this pair and just see if they are actually mating or if they're not. And of course I'm not 100% sure at this stage whether or not it is Amber Eyes, since we haven't got the best view for now. I'm trying to think if there's a way we can improve it. And I mentioned it to Taxon earlier, I don't really want to risk in any way damaging the vehicle. Now, as we wait for our lions to go about the process of producing more tiny cubs to supplement the Nkuhuma pride, Wesley, I don't know of that many situations where a lioness has rejected her cubs. It does happen, though. I have heard, I don't know of many cases, but I have heard of it happening. And what even happens occasionally is if the female is starving, if she hasn't had much access to food, if she's really struggling, she might even go so far as to eat her own cubs, which to us sounds relatively repugnant, but for them makes some sense. Oh, let's see. Ah, yes. And there we have it. What I could only describe as a relatively unenthusiastic pairing between the male and the female, which really does make me think that it's Amber Eyes. She didn't even roll properly onto her back, as a female in her height of estrus would do. So, you see what I mean about the strange sounds that issue forth from the male in such scenarios? Particularly this male lion. I think it's Blondie. We'll go and reposition in a moment now that they've settled in a different spot. It's that bizarre whining sound that they make. It's actually quite funny to listen to. The deep growls, the deep bassy growls were coming from the lioness. Okay, let's go and ID these two. Have an answer to our mystery once and for all. That's not going to work either. Sorry, Brian. It's just that it's not even that thick in here. It's just a very complex. Are we going to make this, Brian? It's just a complicated arrangement of sticks and so on. It's making life tricky. We're nearly there. Never fear, everybody watch your heads. Duck down. We're getting there. Obviously, again, what I was talking about before, I don't want to drive too close to them and stress them out. And while we play a delicate game of repositioning, at least he's looking across in our direction every now and again. X-Ranger has a lovely question. He wants, and it's a really beautiful question, actually, because it's got a lot of different meanings to it. If these animals could understand one word that we said to them, what would we want them to understand? And his would be sorry. That's a really nice question. I like sorry. I think we've got a lot to apologize for as a species in general. Sorry works for me relatively well. I know it's two words, but it's one sentiment, which would be thank you. Would also be quite a nice way of conveying our appreciation to them in terms of the extent that they allow us into their lives. I don't know, I'd love to actually, this is a really lovely question. I'd love to hear from all of you. If you could convey meaning with one word, only one word, which one you would choose. And you can, of course, send those thoughts through, along with any questions that you have, on hashtag SafariLive on Twitter, or email them through to questions@wildearth.tv. What would you want to say, Brian?
I don't know, I'd have to think.
I know, it is one that requires thought. If you've only got one option. Sorry is a big one. But usually as human beings, when we're saying sorry, it's quite often, very sadly, a bit too late. I like sorry. Kirsty says she likes sorry as well. It's quite sad. I think thank you is also a nice one. I suppose those are really the only two options. But we are incredibly privileged to spend time with these great cats, as they give us some really, we really have seen some amazing aspects of their dynamics over the last few days. From the love triangle, as we described it, which of course it was not a love triangle at all, but with a little bit of hormonal complication a couple of nights ago on the Sunset Safari, through to the brand new cubs. Well, for us, brand new cubs. For her, she's been dealing with them for the last 5 weeks or so. The prospect of even more cubs, and then the courting and mating of the two pairs that we are close to on the Sunrise Safari. We've definitely seen some interesting things happening. Now, researchers have spent a considerable period of time researching and understanding and observing the different lion dynamics in different parts of Africa, and of course it does differ. And one of the ways in which they go about that is through what's known as a callback mechanism. So essentially hooking up a big speaker and playing different sounds through it, one of which can be a lion roar. And Michael, you're wondering if they recorded a lion's roar and then played it back to them, would they know that it is them? And every indication seems to suggest that yes, they do know the sound of their own voice, or at least they recognize individual sounds. They definitely respond to the call of strange lions. So if a strange lion roar is played, they will absolutely respond to that. And if a call of a coalition mate is called, they respond in a different way. So the animals out here do recognize individuals and individual voices. We can spend years listening and we'll probably get to know the difference. We'll probably get to recognize the difference between a male lion roaring and a female lion roaring. But none of us have got to the point that we can recognize individuals as they call throughout the night. I think that anybody who claims to be able to recognize an individual lion roar, unless they have spent a considerable period of time with that individual, I think that might be a little bit of a stretch of the truth. But lions certainly know each and every single individual call. Aren't they just extraordinary? And of course this camera does give us an unparalleled insight into a lion's world. We get to get right up close and personal without actually getting right up close and personal with them. And Billy Joe's one word, beautiful description and very fitting for our animals right now. Billy Joe's one word that they could understand would be peace. And yes, I suppose if you could convey that to them, that you mean no harm, and that you would appreciate the same in return occasionally, is definitely a beautiful one to have chosen. And Alan's got a similar idea, I think. Alan would like to be able to say friend. Or somebody's got a little bit more than friendship on his mind. It's Amber Eyes. Flop onto her side. She can't even be bothered really to roll onto her back at this point. She's definitely reached the end of her estrus cycle. He's going to follow standard lion behavior, which is to urinate and then to scrape his feet in it, help to spread his scent, that instinctive territorial response. And that often happens. So initially, well, there we go, now he's scent marking using the scent glands around his face. It's a bit too anthropomorphic, but it does almost look as though he's got a bit of a smile on his face. Some more scent marking. And then he's going to go and find himself a nice patch of shade. Now she's trying to find herself a nice spot away from him, in the shade preferably. William's one word would be, that he could convey, would be downwind to the animals. A point duly noted. It's a very good point. The odd reminder to our lovely cats that we are sitting downwind would also be appreciated for several olfactory reasons. One of which is that they can be quite gassy. I thought that was her rumbling for a moment. It's not. It's another vehicle driving past. I was going to say, I'm surprised that she's still growling. She can't be that upset about it. This is Blondie, right? I'm not completely crazy. No, this is definitely Blondie. So he has reunited with his lady companion. And as you can see, if you ever need any kind of indicator that they are coming to the end of the estrus cycle, apart from her lack of enthusiasm in rolling over, initially the matings are very often initiated by the female. So she'll go and get his attention whenever she wants to mate. Towards the end, the male gets up and does it reluctantly every now and again, and she kind of responds with an equal reticence in turn, kind of a sort of being resigned to completing the estrus cycle. And I'm relatively certain she cannot wait to be rid of him for now. She wants to go and eat, because she is really hungry. Big sigh. I'm now doubting myself as well about the idea of this Birmingham boy. I don't know. I haven't seen all 5 of them together in a very long time. He did have a scratch under his right eye that was relatively fresh when we saw it 3 days ago, but it could have healed up already. And for those of you who are very, very well acquainted with the Birmingham boys, if you don't think it's Blondie, please do let me know if I've got the ID wrong. I think it's safe to say we definitely know it's a Birmingham boy. Here's an interesting aspect of the Birmingham boys and the Nkuhumas. The amber-eyed female that he's mating with now, the Nkuhumas are big lionesses. I mean, they're not huge, they're not abnormally large, but they are relatively big girls. And yesterday, or a couple of days ago, when I saw them both next to the vehicle, this male and this female, there was a very interesting observation that I noted, which is that although they might be heavier, the amber-eyed lioness is at least 2 inches at the shoulder taller than the male is. The Birmingham boys are not huge. They're not enormous males. They've certainly grown, and it's not really all about size. Numbers and attitude is what determines a lion's success in terms of dominating a territory. The lioness is definitely taller than the Birmingham boy. Okay, well there we go. Thank you to Wild Dog Pup and Molly. Gets a bit tricky to ID the different male lions, and apparently this is number 2 and not Blondie. So Amber Eyes has found herself a new male consort for the day. The number 2 and not Blondie. I wonder where on earth Blondie went. I wonder what enticed him to move away from a female in estrus. That's relatively common though. So with male lions and a female in estrus, they very often tire before she is finished with her heat or her estrus cycle, at which point one of the other coalition members will take over, which is why, as we spoke about before, it's often quite a peaceful decision amongst coalition members who gets to mate with a female, because they all get a chance. It's the complete opposite with cheetah. So within a male cheetah coalition, only one of the males is dominant and only one of the males will get to mate with the females, which is why cheetah are far more fussy about making sure that they are related to their coalition members, preferably closely related, preferably brothers. Male lions are not so fussy, because they know they will always have an opportunity at some point to mate if they establish themselves as dominant. It doesn't matter if they form a coalition with a male that's unrelated, which is what's happened with the young Nkuhuma male. with Junior. Now, the Birmingham boys have earned themselves quite the reputation recently. They're also known They're also known now as the Gowrie males by some of the other lodges. Before the Birminghams and before the Matimba males, there was a very famous coalition of male lions called the Mapochos. Leslie, yes, this was absolutely part of the original Mapocho territory. The amazing thing about the Mapocho male lions, it was a coalition of 6 members strong when they first started to take over an area, and they actually ended up getting hold of a territory that I think was about a third of the size of the Sabi Sand itself. So their territory stretched all the way from around Buffelshoek to Torchwood to Cheetah Plains, our entire Traverse area, central Djuma, Arathusa, right down to Mala Mala, Londolozi. Their territory was absolutely enormous. And that, in the end, was the interesting thing about the way in which the Mapochos went, because they left behind, as male lions do, a trail of destruction in terms of the number of lions that they killed. It's what male lions do when they have a takeover. But I think what was extraordinary about the Mapochos is because there were 6 of them, their impact was felt over such an enormous area. And it actually left, in a way, once the Mapochos were eventually, they had to split. They had to split in order to maintain the territory, and they did. They split into 4 into 2. The famous Mr. T, or Satan, as he was known, along with Kinky Tail on the one end, and the other 4 on the other. And they left behind a very interesting impact in terms of a vacuum of young male lions, because once they were slowly but surely they reached the end of their tenure, and they were killed off one by one, either by Salati males, by the Majingilani males, the other male coalitions, which is inevitable. They had killed so many cubs. They also created their own. They obviously produced their own cubs as well, but they left behind quite an interesting vacuum of dominant males, just because they took such a huge amount of area. So Birmingham boy number 2 is a lot more enthusiastic than the Nkuhuma lioness. As an interesting aside, Birmingham boy number 2 is also a little bit less skilled than the other Birmingham males. He hasn't quite got this right just yet, which is why the process is taking longer than normal, and why he hasn't gone about biting her neck yet. There we go. Flopped down. As Amber Eyes settles down, having dealt with the relative inexperience of Birmingham boy number 2, Joseph, interesting point. Joseph has a thought, well, wouldn't it make more sense for a male lion to stay with one lioness their entire lives? And the answer is that's not ideal for the way in which genetics works. So essentially, for most male animals, spreading their genes, or most male mammals, let's put it that way, Spreading their genes across as wide an area as possible is one of the ways in which the animals evolve and their genetic structure changes. I do see your point, though, because, of course, we speak about the monogamous jackal pairs, for example. It's just that the lions have evolved in a completely different manner. And because there is such a level of competition, there's high concentrations of lions, and male lions fight very fiercely. They fight to the death. Lions have evolved to be social cats due to the hunting advantage that it confers. Not for a baiting advantage, but a hunting advantage automatically means successful rearing of offspring, because it means more success in terms of survival. That's a good point. But a male lion that kept one female throughout his life would really struggle, because they're social, as I said, they're social cats. And without the support of his brothers or a coalition member, chances are he would not be able to raise even one generation to adulthood and keep them safe, just because the level of competition between male lions is so incredibly high. They're not really evolved to be monogamous species. Jackal, little steenbok, little duiker, that's something completely different. It's a totally different social structure, so they can afford to be monogamous. I think it's safe to say that we have some exciting prospects for this afternoon's sunset safari. This pair I don't think they're going to be going terribly far, and if they have moved, there's always the other pair of lions that are a little bit further to the north of us. They just appear to be, for the moment, lions everywhere on Djuma. And then, of course, most exciting is the prospect of little lion cubs. So the lioness did move off out of the drainage line, taking the cubs with her from where we first saw them. However, both Taxon and Aubrey seem to think that that's where she's going to return at some point during the day, that she was just sort of wondering, and that she'll be back into that area later. And we did comment about how wonderful it looks as a place to keep little ones. So our Birmingham boy and our Nkuhuma lioness will be keeping themselves occupied in the hours between the sunrise and the sunset safari. And perhaps James will have an opportunity to see the Nkuhuma cubs as well. I know that he's been really, really excited about seeing them, and I'm so looking forward to him having that opportunity. Fingers crossed that will happen this afternoon. I cannot believe the way the morning has gone. It was what we were planning, but it definitely is a pleasure. And I think Gabby has chosen the best word in my opinion, and it's similar to what I was thinking, but Gabby's actually said it better. Gabby is 8 years old and watching in my home city of Johannesburg, and actually Brian home city as well. Gabby, I think you've got it exactly right. The one word we could communicate to the animals would be grateful, because we are incredibly grateful that they let us spend time with them in their lives as they do, to watch them as we do, and to be involved in all of their joys and the sadness and whatever else happens in their natural way that it does out here. Gabby, well done. I think that is the best possible way, the best possible word we could communicate to these really magnificent creatures. Aaron going down a different tack entirely, but definitely a good one. Aaron would like us to be able to ask the animals, have you seen Karula? Or communicate that in some way. Oh, one more time before the end of the sunrise safari. Aaron, that's genius. So the lionesses, lizard, deep brown. Lions giving us one last demonstration of their production of the next generation, and amber eyes flopping down, and a beautiful view there of one very special lioness, I think, for many of us. Well, thank you, animals. I don't know if you can understand me. You definitely can't. But I am very grateful for the morning that we have shared with them. Thank you to Brian for all of his fantastic camera work. As always, we've definitely had a really special morning. And thank you to Kirsty and to Lou in Final Control. Most importantly, thank you to you all for joining us across the world. And we hope to catch up with you on the Sunset Safari. Enjoy and have a wonderful day. We will see you then. Bye-bye.